Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spiritual Awakening 101. My name is Jerry Yakov, Reverend Jerry Yakov. I'm your host. Today, we're going to be talking about compassion and reconciliation. And I had that idea because it's always close to my mind. Um, those of us that are still struggling with humanity, but recognizing our divinity, probably are in touch with compassion and reconciliation because of the so many mistakes that we make. And we want to choose again to, in some way, make amends, reconcile, have compassion for ourselves and others because of the mistakes. I'm not saying they're sinful, I'm saying they're mistaken. And it's clear to me most of the time that when I have the idea of reconciliation, I'm 99% there. But what I need is a connection with my higher power, God of my understanding. And in that connectivity, I then have a finalization of the reconciliation and compassion for both the other person and myself. And the mistake, which I committed or they committed, is completely undone and corrected. It's eliminated from the mind because the mind, by and large, when I'm centered and I'm clearly in alignment with this higher power, which I call God and love, this mind naturally goes towards reconciliation and compassion. Uh, it's not a difficult thing, especially when that final step is taken with the higher power we call God. I wrote something today that I'll just read by way of introduction. It's a prayer treatment on this topic. I am one with God, the good omnipotent. My soul is my real identity in Christ consciousness. My purpose as a teacher of God is to share the love of Christ with all I meet. I consistently message God's will and use His power to carry it out. My life is a living testament to the power of Christ thinking, Christ speaking and acting. All of my thoughts are centered in Christ, and so my life is a miracle of love, wealth, health, happiness, full self expression, compassion, and reconciliation. It is already done. All my prayers are answered because God's voice speaks to me all through the day. I release this prayer treatment to the God of my understanding, knowing it is a blessing to all humanity. I am so grateful and thankful for these blessings, and so it is. Well, that's just a introductory prayer treatment that we use in Science of Mind, and I like the idea of an affirmative prayer treatment because I'm not beseeching God. I'm acknowledging God, God's power of omniscience and omnipotence and omnipresence. I'm saying that God is within me and I'm within God. And anything is possible for the good, for the reconciliation and compassion that I seek and that I seek for others. This is the nature, and this is the way, and this is the life. All else will be given unto me as I practice these principles. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven within, and all else will be given unto you. Our cups runneth over when we reconcile and have compassion for our brethren. This is the truth. This is the nature of my ministry. And this is the nature, I think, of all wisdom paths that teach compassion and reconciliation. This is clearly at play with the Buddhists who lost their homeland in Tibet. And yet the Dalai Lama has nothing but reconciliation and kindness in his heart, compassion for those that make mistakes, the Chinese in this case that expelled them. Jesus' message from the cross was definitely a message of compassion and reconciliation. He was crucified, but the focus is on the resurrection And the resurrection is the reconciliation and the compassion that he showed for his tormentors and his crucifiers. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they're doing. He only taught love. And for the teaching of love, he was punished unnecessarily and unfairly. So this was a radical example of having a conciliatory mindset, one that says, I'm in line with God's view, the Christ consciousness. God's view is always one of peace, serenity, reconciliation, and perfect love. Perfect love casts out all fear, casts out all pain, all suffering. And of course, this was demonstrated on the cross by Jesus. He knew no pain. He knew no suffering because he was in a conciliatory, compassionate state of mind. Well, this is our charge. This is our way. And when we think about ourselves as any less than Jesus and as Christ, we're doing a great disservice to ourselves and to God, our Creator, because God created us in its likeness and image. And in that likeness and image, we are to be as unconditionally loving and reconciling and compassionate as Jesus was, because he had attained the Christ awakening and self-realization. You and I can do the same. He said, you'll do as much and more than I. And I think what he meant was not magical tricks where, you're accomplishing something incredible and everybody oohs and ahs. It's not about that. It's about the inner the inner landscape, not the outer. The outer landscape is illusory ultimately in its nature. Now, interimly, we use it as a classroom, a place where we can identify opportunities to reconcile and have compassion for people and for ourselves. But ultimately, when we're fully awake and we have that enlightened moment, the full Christed realization and awakening, then the outer landscape recedes to the background in our consciousness. And what comes to the foreground would be our divinity and others' divinity. And that is not set in a three-dimensional world with the five senses. It's set within our minds in a fourth-dimensional world of caring and love, the intangibles, if you will, but the highest of expressions of both humanity and divinity. We walk this earth because we're in it, but not of it. And being in the world, we want to walk with that compassion, with that conciliatory mindset. Granted, we continue to make mistakes. Each of us knows the mistakes that we've made. And when we make in the 12-step parlance, an 8th and 9th step, we're really looking deeply at our lives and our relationships. Are there opportunities? Can we make a list of people that we may have harmed, wittingly or unwittingly, because we're looking deeply? And then we take the 9th step and we actually either go to them or in some way communicate within our hearts and minds and their hearts and minds that we are making amends and conciliation, amends and compassion. There's a wonderful Hawaiian tradition of ho'oponopono. I've made a mistake. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And I love you. That would encapsulate, I think, what we're talking about in following the Christ consciousness. Ho'oponopono. Excuse me. Well, I wanted to read something in the Science of Mind magazine. I always like to turn to, and in this case, the May issue, May of 2020. This is the reading for Tuesday, May 26th. Here's a quote from Ernest Holmes. He says, "Compassion is the most gentle of all human virtues, for it is the outpouring of the divine givingness through all." Well, here we're clear that compassion is a gentle expression, is a kindly expression, and it feeds our minds and our hearts. It actually gives us the God power, recharges our batteries, so that when we're out in the world, yes, we make mistakes as human entities, but our divinity is always coming to the fore. And we treat people and recognize their divinity because we recognize our own. Well, here's what the writer of this particular entry from May 26th, 2020 has to write in the magazine. He says, "I admittedly struggle in my life's work as an educator. The systemic issues of poverty, suffering, and inhumane labor practices at times shackle my heart and mind with an unbending futility. I must constantly move into some form of mental reconciliation, referring to Jesus' instruction to be in the world but not of it. None of us see, hear, or experience the entirety of infinite intelligence at play, what some would call our infinite karmic blueprint. We only see what's in front of us through limited physical vision. I falter when responding from an in-the-world perspective, without partnering with what Ram Dass termed keeping your heart open. Faith makes the suffering bearable. Action helps the sufferer. The cultivation of the compassionate heart requires it to be both broken and operational. It's like the monk who is crying because his son has died. His student approaches him questioning, 'What are you crying about? You know it is all an illusion.' The monk replies, 'Yes, but the death of a son is the greatest illusion.' Much like the depiction of the Buddha with a little smile at the corners of his mouth, that smile is called the smile of unbearable compassion. That represents the eternal lesson of paradox. That smile represents the eternal lesson of paradox. Yes, it's an illusion. Yes, I feel deeply for the loss of a loved one. Am I allowed to do that? There are no rules against it. There's no rule against compassion. There's no rule against the deep feeling of love and for an experience of losing a loved one on the physical plane. We're always to remember the metaphysical connection that will always exist into eternity, that fourth dimensional connectivity, that joining of minds, not visible in the third dimension, but always felt and palpable in the fourth dimension, where our enlightenment keeps unfolding. Well, the Talmud states, he goes on, 'Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now.' And that's from Micah, the book of Micah. 'You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it.' Well, I want to just comment on that because that touches me. Of course, we're not going to complete the work for others and for the world. There's an expression in the Hebrew tradition of tikkun olam, repairing the world. And of course, that's an ongoing opportunity for each one of us to reconcile within our own hearts and minds that we are one with the many, and the many are one with us. And in that reconciliation, we are repairing. We are making a difference. And then as generations come and go, each generation stands on the shoulders of the previous generation. with the same opportunity to reconcile and have compassion and perform tikkun olam, repairing of the world. That's our real purpose. Not making a living, which of course is necessary when you're in the world. Not doing all of what the normal earthly, you know, rules and regulations would say is our real purpose or function. Our real purpose and function is one of a divine being. And that is not something that you can write down on your to-do list. It's not a goal. It's a journey that is really distanceless. There is no distance to this journey, and there is no goal except the ultimate awakening of the heart. When we awaken with the heart, we realize that the journey, although it seemed to take us in that direction of awakening, was always present. The awakened heart, the compassion, the reconciliation, the Christ consciousness was always within us. So there was no distance to travel, but a discovering, a practical discovering in each of our attempts to make amends, in each of our attempts to reach out with our hearts to other hearts. Well, Ram Dass, he's referred to again here, called those who do this work of mercy peacers, Peacers. A peacer must be able to look suffering in the eye and not flicker. A peacer embraces the evolutionary process of all souls with the balance of a compassionate heart. We are all called to be peacers, whether in our homes, communities, or the furthest regions of our planet. We must learn to smile with unbearable compassion, smile with unbearable compassion. And here's a closing affirmation in the article. I reveal a world that works for everyone through committed, compassionate action. I really love today's topic and the way that we're conversing about it, not in an egoic way, that I'm a peace worker, and that makes me in some way special. I'm a peace worker, and that makes you and I special. That makes us brothers in Christ. That makes us warriors, with really quotation marks, warriors, not forceful or in any way violent, but we're warriors for Christ consciousness and compassion and reconciliation. Being a warrior for me has taken on a meaning of one's vow. I vow, I take a stand, I make a decision. You know, the one thing that God gave as an expression to his Son, Christ, and that's all of us, is the power to make a decision. And ultimately, there are only two decisions that need be made. One is for love, and the other would be a decision for fear. Fear represents, of course, non-faith, and love represents faith. So we can boil it down to we have the power to make a decision for faith or non-faith. And I have made this vow, this commitment for faith in the wisdom that is so beautifully expressed, and such wisdom works as A Course in Miracles, for an example. This teaches me that there is a way, and the way has already been decided. I am to align and co-create with that decision that's already been decided. God made the decision. God made the expression. God made the capability within my mind and my heart to align and co-create consistent with that decision. Well, this is the end of that little article called Peacers, which was a word that Ram Dass called those who do the work of mercy. Well, let's add that to our vocabulary. Peacers. I work for reconciliation. I work for making amends and compassion. It's the most natural thing for any and all of us. You know, you don't have to learn in a didactic sense. There's no manual that would say, well, step one to be compassionate, step two to be compassionate. What we're to do is throw away the steps and look deeply within. Be vigilant for the kingdom of heaven that's within our hearts, within us. And there you'll find the omniscience and all of the guidance that is necessary for us to be partnering with the Christ and with God itself. And being a partner in this enterprise is the most fulfilling thing that you'll ever do. And those around you will recognize and be fulfilled as well. They may not accept it at a given moment when you've extended it. However, it's almost like an escrow account. It's there for their taking when they're ready. So I place into this divine escrow account all the love and compassion that God has put into my right mind, my Christ consciousness. My faith-filled decision is becoming more and more real because I'm extending that to my brothers. And in the extension, this reservoir or this escrow account becomes clearer and clearly more available to my other brothers and sisters in Christ. And that includes everybody. It doesn't have to be in the Christ as a nomenclature or a label. It could be the Buddha. It could be available in the Tao. It could be available in the Krishna, in the Hindu tradition. It can be available in the Judaic custom of the Shekhinah or the light. Rahmanas. Rahmanas is compassion and kindness. Have Rahmanas for your brothers. This is the way that you'll know Rahmanas in your own heart. Kindness. Metta in the Buddhist tradition. Metta is kindness. This is what we're teaching, and this is, I think, what ultimately we all need. There's nothing else, because all else will be given unto us after, but not before, we have aligned with the faith that's in our minds and hearts. That's a decision that we have to make. That's a decision that we have been empowered to make. But along with that empowerment and decision-making ability is free will. And we can make a decision for the non-faith rather than the faith of compassion and love. The choice is ours. The choice is always ours. But ultimately, I think you'll find that whatever choice you make will come back upon you deeply. So if you make a decision for non-faith, what you're really doing is drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I'm sure you've heard that expression. Whereas the choice for faith and compassion and love excludes the whole option of all the poisonings that are available in the world. You know, jealousy, envy, revenge, all the ways that we decide that, you know, we're a victim and somebody else is a victimizer. And we say to ourselves, behold me, brother, at your hand I die. You're the cause of my problems. Well, of course, there's never then any opportunity to have a transformational experience. A transformational experience is one that happens within the individual whose thinking was firstly non-faith-based. And then there's this unique miracle of a decision for faith, for reconciliation, and for Christ consciousness, which is the label that I give it. But use your own label. Use whatever understanding works for you. The truth, when it's known, shall set you free. And I know that that's the case because I've experienced it over and over and over again. This is the nature and the way of miracles, not tricks on the phenomenal level, but true miracles in the heart and the mind, where there's a shift from fear to peace, from hell to heaven. You know, heaven is a state of mind. Hell is a state of mind. And it corresponds, of course, with the decision for faith or non-faith, hell being a non-faith-based decision. Now, the nature of your faith, and I don't mean it in a religious way. Let's not talk about faith-based Christianity or faith-based Judaism or Islamic faith-based decisions. I'm talking about an inner God of your understanding, defined as infinite love, agape love. This is what we have as our faith. Then it may be in some way structuralized with a particular faith-based religion. If that turns you on, if that floats your boat, make sure that you don't exclude others because they're not a member of the faith that you have decided to follow. The kind of faith that I think we're talking about and this ministry is teaching goes way beyond that limited envelope. We're really going beyond labeling by religion. What we're saying is there's a faith that transcends all faith. There's compassion that transcends all teachings of compassion. There is a way, and the way is indefinable. This is the Tao. Those who know the way don't speak, and those that do speak don't know the Tao. Well, if you think about that, that's a lovely koan. One of those riddles that the deeper you look into it, the clearer your mind is. Well, that's what we're looking for, the clarity of our minds, because clear minds then can reflect the God power. Troubled minds, darkened minds, they distort the God power, and they keep us from being all that we can be. Well, this is a wonderful topic. I hope that you've enjoyed the presentation. As I say, we'll be going into this more in the future. My love to all of you, my gratitude to the NECAT TV station for allowing us to air these videos. And as I always like to say, we will see you next time. Namaste, shalom, and peace. God bless everyone, and much love.